Welcome to the Be Better broadcast, where we bring you tips and strategies and techniques to help you to live an extraordinary life and achieve self-mastery. We talk about stories and strategies and inspiration that can help you in your personal life. We talk about things that will help you in your career. Specifically today, we are speaking with an expert in the world of sales, but not just an expert in the world of sales. This individual has become a friend of mine over the last few months. And we were introduced through a common friend, Christine Smith, who's also been on the podcast talking all about networking. And I connected with Nick immediately for a few reasons. The first reason I connected with our guest today, Nick Nighbor, is he's also in the world of sales. And we haven't had a lot of salespeople on this podcast giving tips and strategies. We've had a few like Jeff Grice and a few other people. But I connected with him also because he has a very high energy level. Like this guy, he's served our country. He's done incredible things in the world, helping a bunch of different sales professionals. And I'll read his introduction here in a second. But I connected with him because he's got such a positive outlook on life. This guy, just by having a conversation with him, you can genuinely tell that he wants to help people to succeed. And he doesn't just want to do that. He is doing that. He's in the trenches. He's got his company, Empower 8, where he hosts masterminds and he works with salespeople, whether they're entrepreneurs, salespeople and companies, whatever it may be. This is a guy you want to hear from. So without further ado, if you do not know Nick Nighbor, Nick has served 8 years in the U.S. Army. So thanks for your service, brother. Shortly after graduating college and finishing his service in the military, he got into sales with a financial services company. Nick has trained and led sales organizations and also has excelled as a producer. Nick helps companies with their offline branding, such as apparel and promotional materials. And Nick has also created Empower 8, a sales mastermind company where he brings outside sales professionals together to take their career to the highest level. Nick, it is a pleasure to have you here, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And I'm excited to talk with you because I talk all the time about sales, right? I'm in the world of sales just like you.
Yeah.
And people tend to see like the title of this episode, even, which we're going to talk all about how to become empowered and achieve sales excellence. And they're going to think, okay, well, I'm not a salesperson in a company right now. This episode's not going to be for me. But that's the complete opposite of the reality, because I believe that we're all in sales in some capacity. And I won't get into the long spiel of why I think that, but I'm curious to know specifically, who are the salespeople and the professionals that you love to work with the most?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Brandon. So the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is the word hunger. And what I mean by hunger, and I'm not talking about just drive or ambition or just being super, super motivated, wanting to just go out and hustle. Like there's certainly a component there where you have to go out and do work to build, right, to build your career. But what I'm talking about is someone that's maybe new into sales, or maybe that's someone that's been into sales for years. The word hunger comes to my mind. Is that person learning and growing on a daily basis? Are they a sponge? Some of the people that I look up to the most, they're the biggest learners. They're always in a book. They're always listening to a podcast. They're always asking questions. And as long as you're open and willing to learn new information, I think anyone can succeed in this profession.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'd be confident in saying that if they're watching this right now, they're most likely someone who is hungry, right? Someone who is taking in information. Now, I want to ask you, because this is really important. I've met a lot of salespeople who do listen to a lot of podcasts, right? They might even read every now and then. They might listen to a few audiobooks. They might have this facade of wanting to grow and improve, but then they still say, I'm just not getting the results that I want. What is it? Why am I not getting results? I'm listening to this podcast. Where do you think the disconnect is there between those salespeople who still aren't able to be where they want to be, even though they do believe that they are still learning and still growing?
So personally, I can speak on that personally. When I got into the career of sales and started I'm not sure where I was introduced to reading a book, or actually I do remember one of my first jobs selling door to door was I was handed a book, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Yes.
That's actually where I started. That was like the first sales book that was ever handed to me. And what happened was when I got on that journey, I was really proud of myself for reading a book and finishing a book. Like, great job, Nick, you read a book. Okay, I did that for a long time, Brandon. I was like super proud of myself. I put all these checks in the box, and now I have like all of these shelves full of books. But had I not applied anything, the books really would have been a waste of money. So I'm not sure if it was 2 years into the journey or 5 years into the journey. There was a point where I realized, okay, if I'm going to read, why don't I pull something from that book and start applying it? So it's not just the reading. It's would you say just reading is just a transaction, but applying the information, that's where the transformation comes.
Wow. Very interesting. I love that you brought up that book because I haven't met another person who says that the first book they read really was the greatest salesman in the world, greatest salesperson in the world. For those who haven't read this book, let me tell you something. I forgot who recommended this book to me years ago, but this was the book that I actually read before I even touched The Secret, before I read Think and Grow Rich. It was this book by Og Mandino, and I used to think it was OG Mandino. I was rudely corrected. And I had a buddy who read it with me, and this guy is, who, if you're listening, this book is incredible because it's not a book that you just read front to back. You could, but the point of this book is to ingrain this information into your mind over the course of, I think you read each chapter for, 30 days, right?
Yeah. So the first chapter, and they're super short chapters, but it's all principle based.
Yes. And the thing about these chapters is you got to pick up this book is the point I'm making, guys, because you read each chapter in the morning, you read it out loud, and then you read it again in the middle of your day. Okay. And then you read it again at the end of your day, and you repeat this for 30 days with each chapter. And there's still a line I remember: when tempted to criticize, bite thy tongue. When moved to praise, shout from the roofs. Right. And that stuck with me all these years because that was one of the first books that really helped me to change my mindset around how can I be successful. So are there specific things that you do when you're reading a book? And I think it's really important to stay on this subject because readers are leaders and leaders are readers, right? And a lot of people say, well, reading's not for me. There's a lot of different ways you can digest this material, but the biggest part is actually applying it, like you said. So how do you hold yourself accountable, I guess, in saying, when you read a book, how do you hold yourself accountable to take action on what you read?
Well, I think it's just like anything with what we do, whether it's through relationships or business or career or fitness. It's really anything. The longer that you're the longer that you're immersed in doing a certain activity, you realize how many layers there are to dissect. When I read a book, and I'm usually in like at least 2 books at a time, but I don't read like a ton at a time. I read it so I can digest. Like I'm on a book right now that's over 400 pages, and this guy, he's a genius. It's a very, very meaty book. The whole thought process that I think of when I read a book is the best way to learn something is to teach it. So when I read it, let's say I read the first chapter of The Greatest Salesman in the World. And before I start the chapter, I ask myself, all right, if I had to explain this chapter to my daughter, how would I describe this chapter? And if I have to like take those words from Og Mandino, right, get them into my head, read the chapter, and then communicate into words what I got from that chapter, that's the best way actually to learn, is to, like, I try to pull out one point whenever I'm like, all right, what's one thing that I can get? Because even if I got 1 point from a book, there's so much value in that. Now you can get a book where I was listening to a book on my run this morning, and I heard like 20 quotes. I'm like, this is gold. And I don't have the physical book, but like now I want to get it because I was almost like digging for gold when I was listening this morning. Like, all right, like what can I get from today? That was my question when I was listening this morning.
What book are you listening to?
I was listening to David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me.
Oh, man. Yes, that book. I love the audiobook of that because at the end of each chapter, as you've heard, it's like a little podcast discussion between the narrator and David Goggins. So
Yeah.
it's like you're almost getting like more behind the scenes content when you listen to the audiobook version than if you actually buy the book. But I
Mhm.
definitely understand that because I'm listening to The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene right now.
That's a good
And
book.
I'm on like chapter 2. It's like a 30-hour book when you're listening to it. So
Mhm.
I'm listening though, and the thing about audiobooks is you really aren't able to, like, I couldn't tell you as much about a chapter as if I actually read the chapter when I
Mhm.
listened to it. But like you said, I'm hearing so many awesome things, and I'm like, I need to pick up this book because I want to go deeper into the book. I like what you said about if you want to learn something deeper, teach it. And I think that that's super important in sales, especially because if you take a look at what sales really is, sales and leadership is influence. It's your ability to grab attention. It's your ability to hook somebody, to have somebody giving you their focus so that you can send them a message of some sort and really help ingrain that message into their mind, to help them, right? To give them a product or a service or whatever it might be. And the more you try to teach what you've learned, the more influential you're going to be, because you're going to be like, okay, well, they weren't listening to me. I wasn't able to hook their attention. They're focused on their phone, right? Like when it comes to like even public speaking for me, which is sales, it's influence.
Mhm.
I've found that if I'm not able to captivate the room, if they're on their phone, if they're doing something, that's not their fault, right? I'm not the guy who's like, hey, get off your phone. Like for me, it's like, what am I doing wrong in order not to captivate these people's attention?
Right.
We talked about sales a lot. I found that a lot of people have different definitions for sales. What do you think of when you think of the definition of sales? What is that for you? I'm curious.
Uh, we encounter problems every single day. Like you personally, Brandon, you encounter problems, and I encounter problems every single day. And the best way to overcome that is some kind of solution. Now, every single person and every single business and every corporation needs different solutions to move themselves forward. A business might want to just increase their revenue. A business might need to get more attention online. For you, right, doing sales training, that the problem that you solve are companies that have a struggling sales force, or they're just plateaued. The problem is they're not where they want to be, right, from point A to point B. So sales is really taking someone or some company or individual from point A, which is their current reality, to point B, and everyone knows they want to get there, but they don't always know how to get there. So
Mm.
I mean, it could be something as simple as um, your car's breaking down and it's not operating how it's supposed to. Well, someone's going to help you with that issue. A mechanic, right? They're in sales. They're trying to like create a solution, and like generally speaking, there's always a problem, and the bigger problem that we solve, the more impact and the more people that we can help.
Well said, brother. Well said. I've met a lot of people I was a new hire sales trainer at some point. So I helped guide people through their first 3 months with this company. And we didn't lose a lot of people, but the people we did lose, a lot of them said, well, sales just isn't for me. And when they said that, I was like, well, sales is exactly what you just said, Nick. It's problem solving, right? So what part of discovering the problem and attempting to solve that with the products and services that you offer are you not able to do? And they said, well, I never thought about it that way. I thought sales was you had to be a fast talker, you had to
Mhm.
mirror their body language, you had to nod when they nodded, say
Right.
specific words. And sales like isn't that tacky 1960s like training and books that used to be talked about back then. Sales is what you just said. It's solving a problem. And yeah, you've got to be enthusiastic. You have to know your
Right.
stuff in order to solve those problems, because you might have the best solution in the world, but if the person doesn't trust you or you're not coming off great, they're not going to want that solution. They'd rather get it from somebody else. So when it comes to sales for you, I'm always curious. You mentioned door to door.
Yeah.
How did you get started in this sales journey, and what compelled you to continue down this journey helping other salespeople?
So when I was in college, I filled out this survey. Some college students came through this class that I was going through, and it was like a 6-question survey just on a piece of paper, and filled it out. and I don't even remember what the questions were, but it was really what it was is like just taking a survey just to see who'd be crazy enough to go knock on doors door to door. So I filled it out. I knew in college I didn't want to like, just work in a factory and just, get paid good money, but not really learn much. So like I really wanted an experience. So I filled out this form and I didn't know if I didn't really care if I did good or bad on the survey. I didn't, but they were just seeing who might be open, really is what they were doing. So I got a phone call, and then I met a couple other college students that were doing the same thing that they were trying to recruit me into. And really what it was, we got out of, it was door-to-door sales is really what it was. But what was unique about it, Brandon, was when you got done with finals, like the next day, you'd go down to Nashville for sales training for a week, but you still didn't know where you were going. So that week you were in Nashville, because Nashville, that's where their corporate headquarters is. So you're spending a whole week of training, and then that week you find out where you're going, right? So I'm located in Wisconsin, and my first summer, I did this 2 summers. My first summer was North Carolina. So they said, hey, you're going to North Carolina. So then we would get done with training. We all drove down. Some of us had cars, some of us did not, but we're all college students. And the whole idea is you're knocking doors 80 hours a week. And if you're knocking doors 80 hours a week in where you live, you're not going to do it. But if you're in a completely different atmosphere, different environment, then you're not going to have the distractions that you would with all your buddies from college. So I went down to North Carolina. It was like 6 days in, and then they actually taught us to knock door to door to find families to live with.
Knock door to door to find families to do what with?
To live with.
To live with.
So you would go down, like you're spending the whole summer selling, correct?
Yes.
But you're not going to spend $1,000 or $1,500 a month staying somewhere. Like, you look for a family to live with.
So your first sale was to find a place to live? Yes. I've never heard of anything like that. That is so bizarre. They didn't put you up as a company. You had to find the place to live.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was literally dropped in a neighborhood and just given this paper map, right? This was 20 years ago. I didn't even have a cell phone. And they'd give you a script or whatever. You knock on doors and you do your script. And it was probably like an hour later, I actually found like this 85-year-old couple that brought 3 or 4 of us in. We paid like $10 a week for rent. And I mean, we weren't there to vacation. We were there to work. So, yeah. So the whole idea is if you're down there and you're pretty much building a business door to door, you don't want to spend all your money staying there. You want to like make the money and then come back. So you're reducing your expenses. So, I learned a lot about myself and what I could do with selling books door to door and knocking on doors and dealing with rejection. So I
want to touch on a couple things you said before we continue, because I think that I want to stay at the whole finding a place to live. So when you knocked on these doors, what would first, how did you break the ice? And second, how did you jump into, hey, I'm looking for somewhere to live? Like, what does that sound like?
Yeah. You wouldn't just ask that directly.
Of course.
It would pretty much just be you knock on the door, and like they even taught you like how to stand and where to stand, because like if I'm coming to your door and I'm like looking directly at you, that's very intimidating. So they teach you to like step back and turn to the side, so your profile, so it's like not intimidating. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It's a little thing, but it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So even like when I'm coming up to a business or something, like I'm still catching myself like turning to the side, because I know that's not intimidating. But what we'd pretty much just say is, hey, my name's Nick. I'm from Wisconsin, college student with some other students here. This is going to sound really crazy. And I'd say that 5 times. This is going to sound really, really crazy. But do you know any family that is looking to maybe make an extra $100 or $200 a month to house his college students. We're just down here to work. And so we wouldn't ask them directly.
Yeah.
We would ask, do you know anyone that might have an extra room? And just like in sales, the first answer is what? No, I don't. And then you would just dig deeper. Like, well, maybe you might have some coworkers. Maybe you got some friends from church. Maybe you got like, would you know anyone? So my second summer, like we couldn't find a place for like a whole week. So we started going to churches. We went to a church and someone just gave us a whole house for this whole summer.
Wow.
So like we have an extra house, and this was in Texas. We have a house, as long as you pay the utilities, you can have it.
That is incredible. I think it's really important what you said there too. When you ask, rather than, hey, would you want $200 a month to hold us as we work for the summer? It's, do you know anyone who, right? Even like when you're asking for referrals, even if a business like tells you no, you can say, well, hey, I appreciate you hearing me out and listening to me. Do you happen to know anyone who could benefit from insert what it is you do or how you can help people, right? I think that's a really powerful question, because then it dissociates those individuals and it makes them think, oh, well, who else might I know that because people want to help people. They want to help you, but you have to tell them exactly how they can help you in the first place.
Yes. Yeah.
So you were selling books door to door.
Yeah. Educational material for like kids from like, 2 or 3 years old all the way up to like college level.
And you'd say, would you say door to door sales is really what helped you build this foundation for what it is you do today? Did that teach you most of the skills that you took away?
Yeah, well, I think it was more like the mental toughness was just learning like the law of averages, learning to keep going, learning to it's really the first position that I've been in that I've really had to mentally push myself.
So for those listening who I've seen this whole video on the law of averages, but let's talk about that, about the numbers game. So I'm working with someone in particular who he's actually doing really well for himself. Like he's winning awards left and right. He's closing deals. He's hard on himself. And I'm going to tell him to watch this episode because I tell him this all the time. And he gets disappointed when people tell him no and when people don't want what he has. And it's almost like he takes it personally in a way. What advice would you have for salespeople who take it personally when they're told no and a deal that they thought might have happened actually falls through? What would you say to that person?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of books, and you've all read them too, Brandon, is whenever someone says no, don't take it personally. Don't be offended. Like, how many books have you read that have said that?
It's easier said than done, though.
It's easier said than done. Like when you're in that position, you can help them. Like, that you can help them and they say no.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel it, it feels like an attack. Like what word am I not communicating to you that this can help you? Because there's obviously some kind of disconnect from them to me. So what I would say to that person is every single interaction that you have that happens from there, there's a really big learning lesson, because you can unpack every single no and dig deep into the layers to find out like what can you do better next time. Because if there was something that wasn't communicated, then we need to find out what was not communicated. Now, you're not going to sell every single time. So when someone's like new, I guess it probably really depends in terms of like the industry. Because I know some salespeople, like they don't really do many calls because they've just been in the industry long. They got like a really great, like their industry knowledge is really good. They got a really good referral base. But there's some roles where like you gotta hammer the phones. Like you gotta be on LinkedIn and the DM. Like you gotta like always be pounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say, in some roles that eventually goes away. But if someone's in a role and that's just the requirement, well, build that hustle muscle. And if you can do it long enough, then it's really not work. Because that would just be what, a bullet point a job requirement. Like if that's just how it is, that's just how it is. I'm not sure if that really answered the question at all.
No, I think it absolutely did. And I like what you said. And I think that could be a book title, by the way. So you might want to write that down and take that. But unpack the no. Super powerful, man. And one thing that is ingrained in that is the idea of, what Jocko Willink says, extreme ownership. When someone tells you no, it's really easy to be like, oh, I can't believe they said that. This makes a lot of sense for them. They didn't give me the time of day to go in there. They kicked me out. They didn't want me to talk to their people, their employees, whatever kind of sales you're in. But how much does it change things when you're able to say, hey, this company said no to me. This customer said no to me. Even this girl at this party I was at said no to me. How much different is it to step back and say, hey, well, what could I have done different in this situation to get a different response? Right? Because everything we do gets a response. So what could you do different next time to get a different response? And it's important that you do take ownership of that action, because if you don't take ownership of it, you're never going to be able to sit back and look at that in a different way.
Yeah, and if you are in, playing the blame game and like not trying to take that responsibility, you're giving all the power away. As soon as you say it was this, it was the territory, it was, you name it. If it's an external, if there's some kind of external thing that you can't control, as soon as you give that power, you've lost all control of that whole transaction.
Yeah.
And you can't change anything because you've given it up. And that's like it's a really sad place to be.
Yeah.
So just taking that responsibility and saying, no, I didn't do well and I can do better.
Yeah, it makes it really hard to continue to like sales isn't the easiest role and position to be in the first place. You have to be able to grow and hear no and be rejected and continue to push on from there. And if you don't approach it with that idea of extreme ownership, and if you don't approach it with what lesson can I take away from this situation, then it's going to be really hard for you. Even in the mastermind I joined with you, you were asking the two individuals, you're like, well, what lesson do you have from this week, right? And if there's no lesson, then okay, well, what didn't go well for you this week? What could you have done differently? That in itself is a lesson, right? And I want to dive more into your journey, because you sold door to door, you found like a place to live door to door, so you could sell door to door. I think that's fascinating, by the way. I know it's not to you, but to somebody who hasn't done that, it's like, that's respectable as hell, man. So how do you go from selling books door to door to then opening your own business with what it is you do with offline branding and all those things, as well as your mastermind? Like, where did that come into play? How did that happen?
So I've worked in a couple different industries. A good chunk was in the financial services industry, like in the banking industry, and then last several years with outside sales in more, I would say like generally speaking, like in the marketing area for small business owners. So I've worked with a number of different managers. Like you've had bosses in the past, Brandon, like you've had people that you've reported to in the past. And when I look back at the last 10 or 15 years, I can think of like one that was really, really good, really good. And I talked to him. I still talk to him every single week. He made a really large impact on me. And I've worked with a lot of other managers that maybe they weren't equipped, maybe they weren't trained, maybe they just didn't know how to communicate to their salespeople, and it left me in a just in a place where I didn't feel comfortable sharing like what was on my mind. I didn't feel comfortable voicing my opinion. I didn't feel like there was a place to be heard. I guess you could say maybe I just felt like a number, and I'm sure, some of the people that are watching this, maybe you feel like a number right now. Like I've been there. It's not a good position. It doesn't feel great. It actually feels bad. Like one day I woke up and went to have a coffee with my new boss, and he's like, yeah, you need to go find another job. And like, no, like like no warning.
Wow.
No, this is like 6 years ago. Like no reason. Like I still don't know why.
Did he buy your coffee at least?
Yeah, he bought my coffee. So I've been in a couple positions where it just didn't feel, I just didn't feel valued. I guess that's probably like the big picture, Brandon, is I just didn't feel valued.
Mm,
So after, 20 years in sales, I realized, you know what, I'm probably not the only one that feels this way. So I'm going to create a platform. I'm going to create a company that fixes that gives people a place to share. I mean, you experienced this last week, Brandon,
mm,
being on one of my groups, just a place to like, just unpack your week, just so you can think.
mm-hmm.
Most people don't think. Most people don't ask questions. Just a place, not even accountability. It's not even accountability. It's just a platform. It's just a place for people to share their thoughts so they can get it out. I feel like a lot, especially salespeople, I feel like the answers are already in there, Brandon. They already have the answers. They just need to like communicate what's going on in their head for them to like work through whatever they're experiencing. And a lot of people don't have that space. I'm creating that space with these masterminds.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So, first of all, I kudos to you on the journey that you've been through. I commend you for identifying this problem and not just identifying it and saying, "Oh, I wish someone would create something that could fix this," but you actually went through with creating it yourself. And now I saw your post recently. You've had how many? Over 50 to 60 people go through your masterminds at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah. Just this year in 2021, over 50 people have gone through the mastermind groups.
That's amazing. That's really cool that you're providing a space for these individuals to share what they're going through, not to like tell them you should do this, but allowing them to tell you what their week looked like, what they learned, what they're going to do next. Is I think one of the even most valuable questions are like, what are you going to do moving into this next week? So I mean, you've heard the quote, man, like you are the 3 to 5 people that you spend the most time around, right?
Yeah.
And if you're able to get yourself around more people who are doing what it is you're doing and hopefully at a higher level than you so that you can continue to grow and learn, then that's a beautiful thing. So let me ask you this, Nick. You must hear the same things all the time, right? When it comes to frustrations that people are working through, all these things, whether it's in your mastermind or one-on-one or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most common frustrations you're hearing from salespeople and professionals in general in recent times? Like, what are you hearing most from people?
I would say maybe like the most recent one is just getting into action with, I'll say like with prospecting, is just being able to, and I'm not sure how much this has changed in the last year or two with everything that's going on in the world. I think more salespeople have been given the opportunity to work from home more, where there was a time when like that's all some certain salespeople did, is they always worked from home. And
Mm,
now I don't know what the percent, maybe 50% of the salespeople used to work from home, not like 95. So what that means is more salespeople probably feel on more of an island maybe than they did before. When you're like,
yes.
for example, like if you're in outside sales, you're working from home, like you're on an island.
Yeah.
Like that's, you're not going to have 5 or 10 people to like interact with every day. The people you're interacting with are the people that you're calling. So the first probably is just like the prospecting piece, just getting into action. And then another thing I think would probably be like organization. Just getting
Organization.
just getting organized with how people approach their day. Like I typically spend at least an hour every Sunday preparing my upcoming week. Like I close my door in my office and I look at my calendar and I fill out my week. I create the things that have to happen. So on Wednesday morning, I know exactly where I need to be. Friday morning, I know exactly where I need to be. Um, there are so many ring, dings, and blings with this device right here, that it's easy to get pulled into 25 different directions. It's 3 o'clock on a Monday. Like, well, I felt busy, but did I really do anything today? Like, most people don't really have that organization that they need to, to be effective with their time.
And most people don't have that community. Like you said, they're working from home. They want to talk to somebody about what they're going through. They want to talk to somebody about their day, but they come home and even their partner, like quite honestly, their partner doesn't really want to hear about it. Right. Because it's like, well, they might say, oh, I'm sorry you had that kind of day. Let's look forward. But they don't understand what it is you do. Right. And not fully, maybe they do, but they still won't be able to empathize because they've got their own life, their own worries. One of the biggest things that really helped me to transform the progress that I was able to make was finding a coach, Nick. And I got a coach earlier this year. I was the coach. So I was like, why do I need a coach? Right. And it sounds really weird to say that because it's like, well, how can I expect others to want to work with me if I'm not working with a coach myself? And I've spent over $1,000 every single month on coaches and groups to be in and all these different things because I value my own progress. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who was like, oh my God, like I told him about a program we're launching and I told him how much it was. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that much money. And it's like, well, what are you losing if you don't pay that? Right? What's going to happen if you don't do this? You're going to stay exactly where you are. You're going to stay exactly where you've been the last 6 months. Right. So in order to really invest in something like what you do, Nick, and things that I do with programs and coaching and whatever it might be, is you have to believe in yourself that when you invest this money, someone's not going to come change you. But the act of actually paying and investing, you're betting on yourself. Right. And you're lighting a fire under your own ass to actually take action and do things. I think just paying you money to be in a group and being in a mastermind helps you by itself because now you're like, okay, I'm in this thing. I'm investing. Like it makes you like want to have things to talk about in the next week's session, which then gets you to take action as a result.
Yes.
And is that what you found?
And I hired my first coach probably 5 years ago, and you will do so much more for yourself. You will do things that you normally wouldn't do when you have skin in the game. I compare it to like a fitness instructor. You can go to a gym and pay $10 a month.
Yeah.
That's the cost of a fast food meal. Now, let's say you're going to spend $250 a month or $350 a month on a personal trainer. You ain't missing that class. You're not.
True.
You're making it. You're showing up because you're investing money. And it's the same thing with coaching. Like when you hired a coach earlier this year, like you are asking yourselves, on a level 5 out of 10, asking yourself a question, now investing in a coach. Now you're like a 9 or 10. You're like, all right, I need to find something to change to make this worth it. So I'm glad that you said that, Brandon, about hiring a coach, because I've done some one-on-one coaching. I really like the mastermind space because I can just help a ton of people and I can help connect more people to each other. Like it's really cool when I hear this person that was in a mastermind group, this guy was there too, and now they're connecting and maybe they're doing business. Like those two would have never met before had they not come into this. They might not be part of one of my paid programs. That's fine, but who can you connect with and help you get better with? So, and that makes me, and it probably does for you, Brandon, it makes me show up better.
Yes.
To the people that are part of my programs, because if I'm not reading books, if I'm not listening to good stuff, if I'm not getting around people that are challenging me, then what are the people doing that are following me?
So true. So true. It boosts your status even to be able to say I'm a part of a mastermind. Like you can't not say that. Like it's cool to be a part of a community and a group of people. It brings you back to the early days when we were around the campfire with our tribe of 100 people, whatever it might be. And it gives you that sense of what you just said, that sense of kinship, right? The only reason that you and I met was because Christine Smith and I are in a group together, right? And we run a business together. And she's like, you need to meet Nick Nighbor. And I was like, okay, cool. So we did. It's the only reason we're having this conversation. It's the only reason I met the people in your group. It's the only reason that we're going to continue collaborating and whatever that looks like and working together. But the art of networking doesn't just happen at network events. It happens through working to improve yourself in masterminds. So I'm huge on practical tips and knowledge. And I'm curious, if you were with a salesperson or a business professional and you're with them, you got 10 minutes, Nick. You've got this salesperson in front of you who wants to improve. You only got 10 minutes with this person. You can only help them in one way, one area. What is like the one area you'd work on this salesperson with in order to help them get better results practically immediately?
The first thing that I would do is it's within the name of my company called Empower 8. There's 8 questions that are called the Power 8. There's 8 questions. So the reason I called it Empower 8 is because you ask those questions, you visit those questions, you read your Power 8 every single day, and that's going to empower you to be more successful. And I would spend that 10 minutes on the first question. And the first question is, a year from now, what do I want my business? What do I want my career to look like? And I would help dig deeper and like really formulate what that looks like, what their business looks like in 12 months. You know, as a salesperson, what does your profession, what does your career look like in 12 months? And I'm talking about using all 5 senses. Does that make sense?
What's the power in that? Tell me. I mean, it sounds like an obvious question, but like for those who really haven't sat down to do that, what's the power in visualizing what that outcome looks like a year from now?
There are times, I mean, it happens with me with training for running. Like there's times I don't want to do it. There's times I don't want to go, but then I see it right there on my desk. Like, all right, that's my vision in 12 months. It's going to pull me along to where I want to be, even when I don't want to be. Because it's not so much like when things are all good. Like anyone can go out for a run and it's 80 degrees out and there's no, like, it's just a beautiful day. But when it's 5 o'clock in the morning and now it's 50 degrees out in Wisconsin, like, all right, well, what's my vision though? So in 10 minutes isn't nearly enough to like think about your vision, but this is sort of where a coach comes in, right, Brandon? Like, all right, what does it look like? All right, it looks like this. Okay, well, what else? Okay, write this down. All right, well, what else? And I literally need to ask that person, like, what else, like 20 times, just to like pull out what they want. Because you can't do it, like, you can do it on your own. You can.
You won't get as far, though.
You won't get as far. And it's got to be with someone that you respect, right? It's not someone that you have influence over, or they have influence over you. It's got to be someone that is going to support you and encourage you and hold you accountable. Someone that you respect. You allow them to ask you that question, like, all right, what else? What else? What else? And then that 10 minutes, having them formulated and say, all right, you need to read that aloud every single day for the next 365 days.
Wow. That's powerful, brother. You said 10 minutes isn't enough time. And I challenge everyone listening right now, even if you did this a week ago, spend some time asking yourself that first question, because 10 minutes on that is more minutes than 97% of people practice ever in their life. Like if you ask most salespeople, like I actually did this yesterday, I was working with an individual and I said, I didn't use that exact question, but I said, where are you headed? Like, what's this next year look like for you in the company? And he's like, oh, I'm not really sure. And it's like, well, if you're not really sure, then you could end up anywhere in a year. Like you're not like it's not that you're making progress. It might be a very lateral move that you're making. So if you don't define where you want to be, I mean, you heard the quote, if you don't choose, where you want to go to, then any road will get you there. So you're just going to keep wandering and wandering. And then you'll be 40, 50, 60, and you'll be looking back and you're like, well, I didn't really do anything that I wanted to, because you didn't have anything that you wanted in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're huge on self-development, and we were talking before the show and you're like, well, yeah, I just ran 7-8 miles. And it's like, that's incredible, because it's an hour earlier for you in Wisconsin than me. I went outside and did some interval training too, but yeah, it's about 60 degrees here, so it was a little bit more comfortable for me. But my point is, the question I have is, do you have like specific non-negotiables in your life? Like when it comes to working on yourself, are there things that you'll do every single day where if you don't do it, your day is not as great as a result? Like what are the things that you make sure to incorporate each day for yourself and your own self-care?
Yeah. So I read every single day. I journal every single day. And journaling is self-care, because I get to unpack my day and write down the things that went well, the things that didn't go well. And then I can take that day and I can put it up on the shelf, and tomorrow's a new day. So when it comes to like self-care, I've talked to you a little bit about this. Right now I'm training for an ultra marathon. So it's like a 20-week program. So rain, sun, hail, whatever, you name it, if I got so many miles I got to get in,
yeah,
I'm doing it. And
by the way, for those who aren't familiar with an ultra marathon, what is an ultra marathon?
Okay, so in the definition of an ultra marathon is anything longer than a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. So
Okay.
in September, so next month, I'm going to be doing a 50-mile foot race.
Hell yeah, man.
So so the non-negotiable in it, not just for me, but like for my kids, like our kids need to see us struggle and push through, because they think parents don't have issues. Like, no, we have bad days too.
Oh man, absolutely.
So they need to see that. So my kids are gonna see their parents pushing through, getting better. Like in 20 years, if we're blessed with grandkids, I want to be able to hang out with my grandkids. I want to be able to like be active with them. Right.
Yes.
This is why I work on myself right now for my future self. So the last year and a half, I really wasn't doing any running, and now I'm up to like a 50. So I'd like to increase that, but I don't want to ask those questions until I get this next one.
The next thing ahead.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like that. The thing I noticed about you, and one of the common themes of this conversation has been, you're always thinking ahead. You're thinking of what's next. You're thinking of what your life's going to look like in a year. There's people who live in the now, right? And living in the now is great because you get to experience what's happening. But if you live too much in the now, you're not ever looking forward at what could come. So you're always just kind of zen, right? You're always just kind of peaceful. But if you're always living in the past, then you're always just reliving things that have already happened, which puts it in a perpetual motion to keep happening over and over and over again. But if you're only ever just living in the future, then you're never appreciating the now. But from everything you're doing, you're living in the now. You're learning from the mistakes that you've made in the past so that you can learn from those lessons, and you're focused on the future. So it's, you dip your toes into the pool that needs the most attention at that specific time. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I took away from this. And the other thing I take away from this, and from you especially, is if you want to improve in sales, improve yourself, right? Yes. Have a vision for yourself, have a vision for your business, take care of your physical body, journal to take care of your mindset, whatever you must do in order to bring yourself to that level. It might be meditation, it might be reading, it might be sitting in silence, it might be going on a run, a bike ride, whatever it might be. Yep. But self-care is going to help explode your business itself. So I want to talk about your masterminds. I want to ask you first, who it's for, because there's people listening who are going to want to join in. And I also want to ask where they can find more information on the mastermind. So first, who's it for and where can we find more information on it?
Yes. So the mastermind groups are for anyone and everyone that are in sales, anyone that's hungry and willing and open to grow and meet other salespeople. So if you're in sales or you know someone that is in sales and they're just maybe they're feeling like they're on an island, maybe they feel like they're not getting the support, maybe they feel like they're not getting the training that they need, maybe they just don't feel like they're part of a community, this is a great way just to get perspective from other people that are doing the same thing that you do, probably not in the same industry, but that's actually one of the biggest benefits, because if I got someone that's in pharmaceutical sales and real estate lending, that pharmaceutical salesperson is going to hear from that lender. And that lender is going to ask a question that pharmaceutical salesperson never even thought of asking. When you think of like Uber and Airbnb, those industries weren't created from people in the industry. They were created from people outside of the transportation industry. It was a different perspective. That's what the mastermind does, is it creates a new perspective. So the people that I'm looking for are anyone and everyone that's in sales, but they, it's not just a networking group. It's also a community where people can voice what's going on. And I like to use the term, I use it often, is iron sharpens iron. You've heard that before. You've heard that before, Brandon. So iron sharpens iron. And every week people get something out of these calls.
Hell yeah, they do. I was in one last week, brother, and it was an excellent call. Just the advice that you gave along with what they were saying too. And it puts some pep in their step for the week ahead. Mm-hmm. Is it true that someone can join a mastermind of yours as a guest for no cost to them one time? Is that true?
Yes. So I'm not going to be doing one here in September, but early next month. What I do is I'll host a 30-day mastermind where you can come and check it out. I would say it's really similar to like the sales coaching, Brandon, or hiring a personal coach. There's a lot of people that they've heard of hiring a sales coach, but then they have like a perception like, well, it's probably going to be like $5,000 a month or something like that. And there are sales coaches that charge that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have a coach right now, and I spend pretty close to what you're investing right now, Brandon. Like, yeah. Yes, like there is that. So where I'm bridging the gap is from someone that's never hired a sales coach. Maybe they're not ready to drop $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on a coach. All right, well, meet us in the middle and invest in yourself somehow. And then when you're ready and you want that personal one-on-one coaching, Brandon's your guy.
It just brings you to the next level.
Yeah, it brings you to the next level. So this is sort of like the masterminds themselves are like that, almost that bridge from no coach to, hiring a one-on-one coach.
Absolutely. Your website, is it empower-8.com?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Empower-8.com. I'm going to put links in the description or the comments of this so you guys can go check out Nick's website for his company, Empower-8, and to learn more about the masterminds, guys, because if you're not in one now, this is the perfect opportunity for you. You're hearing it right now for a reason at this point in your life, and it's time to go check it out and really invest in you to bring you to the next level. Nick, where's the best place that we can follow and keep in touch with you personally on social media?
I am most active on LinkedIn. So if you find me on LinkedIn, you can see my name right on the screen, Nick Nighbor. Just search Nick Nighbor on LinkedIn and go ahead and connect. And my goal is any new connection, if I can get a personal conversation with someone, like that's where Brandon and I met. Like we were connected, but we didn't get to know each other until we connected. So yeah. Like you can have 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, but if you don't connect with anyone, it's like a stack of books you've never read. Like,
wow,
dig in and learn.
Well said. I love that. Absolutely. Nick, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, my friend. Thanks for giving us your time to talk about sales, personal growth, masterminds. We covered a lot in this episode, and thanks for spitting value, brother. It's been great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Another great conversation with Nick Nighbor from Empower 8. Again, check out Empower 8 at empower-8.com to check out more information on Nick, more information on his masterminds. If you want to connect with him personally to have a conversation, he's awesome to talk with. You want to connect with him on LinkedIn, search Nick Nighbor on LinkedIn. I'll put links in the description for both the website and his LinkedIn. But we covered everything from sales, overcoming rejection in sales, pushing yourself to the next level, growing personally by reading and listening to audiobooks, and joining a mastermind and investing in yourself, because that's really what's going to take you to the next level that you might not even know had existed until you've done it. So we covered a lot. Really, my advice to you is take one nugget from this conversation that you're going to use. Like we talked about, it's one thing to listen and say, oh, that made me feel good. It's another thing to listen and say, this is the one thing I'm actually going to use from this. And as always, if you got that nugget of information that you're going to use, that's the price of admission for watching the Be Better broadcast. There's no ads, there's no sponsors. All we ask is for you to share this show with one person so that that person can take away one nugget of information. And eventually we will have thousands of people sharing the show. It'll be in the hands or the screens of more people so that we can make an even greater positive impact on the world. So thank you for watching, as always. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.